This is a key to worksheet 1 for topic C, topic 10 rather, part C. And in this case, you're given the equation of circle in general form, and you want to write it in standard form. So let's look at number 1. And so number 1 is this. So here's the problem. We have x squared plus 6x plus y squared plus 10y equal -4. Now remember the steps in the lessons, the first thing you need to do was to rearrange the terms so that the x terms and the y terms are together, and then move any constants to the other side. So it looks something like this. So you have your x terms together, you have your y terms together, and your constants on the other side. So if you look at number 1, it's already in that form. So your x's are together, your y's are together, and your constant is on the other side. Okay? So step 1 for this one has already been done for you. Step 2, though, says this. Find the coefficients of the first degree terms, x and y, and then we're going to divide that coefficient by 2, and then we're going to square it. All right, so what that means is this. So you see the coefficient of x here is +6, and the coefficient of y is +10. So that's what they're referring to. Now, so when I take 6 and divide by 2, because that's what we need to do if we're going to rewrite this equation in standard form by completing a square, divide the coefficient by 2, and then we're going to square it. So if I divide this by 2, I get 3, and when I square 3, I get 9. All right, so we got to remember this 9 right here. Then do the same thing with the y. So we're going to take the coefficient of y, which is 10. We're going to divide it by 2, which is 5, and we're going to square that. And so I get 25. Okay? Now, once you do that, here's the idea. You're going to add those numbers that you got from here, from step 2, to both sides of the equation. So here's what I would do. Once I write in this form, which step 1 has already been done for you, this is the way I would approach this. I would say x squared plus 6x plus some number I'm going to add here, plus y squared plus 10y plus some number equals -4. And if you add something here, you've got to add it to this side. If you add something on the left, you have to add it to the other side as well. Okay, so what you do to one side, you do to the other. What you do to one side, you do to the other. Okay? All right, so this number that goes here is the number from this part here. That's what goes here. So let's think about what step 2 said. So step 2 said this. Take the coefficient of x, which is 6, divide by 2. I get 3. Once you get 3, the next step is to square it, and you get 9. So I'm going to add 9 to both sides. What you do to the left, you do to the right. We do the same thing with the y's. I'm going to take the coefficient of y, which is a +10. I'm going to divide it by 2, I get 5. And I'm going to square it, I get 25. I add 25 to both sides. Okay? If I'm doing this correctly, the trinomial that you see here and the trinomial that you see here should be perfect square trinomials. Perfect square trinomials. So that means that if I factor this, it's going to factor as a binomial times itself. So I'll be able to write as a binomial squared. So if you do factor this, you're going to get x plus 3 squared, because x plus 3 times x plus 3 is this. Do the same thing here. If I factor this should be a perfect square trinomial, and it is, because when I factor it, I get y plus 5 squared. And then all I need to do is add those 3 numbers together, and so when I add those 3 numbers together, -4 plus 9 is 5, and 5 plus 25 is 30. All right? Now, so this is my standard form. So part of the problem asked you to put the standard form in this blank. All right, so standard form will be x plus 3 squared plus y plus 5 squared equal 30. Then you need to find the center and the radius. All right, and it said this. For the radius, simplify the radicals if possible. Okay? All right, so the center Now, this is where some students get a little confused. They want to say the center is 3, 5. It's not, because you remember the standard form of the equation of a circle, let me go ahead and put that here, is this. It's x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. All right, and so the center, remember, is hk. But it's got to look like x minus h, y minus k. So what I would do here, now this is the answer for that part. What I would do here is this. I would go off to the side and kind of rewrite this in my mind, just like this, in my mind, and rewrite x plus 3 as x minus a negative 3 squared plus y minus a negative 5 squared equal 30. That's the way I would write this. So that way, now I wouldn't do it here. Don't put that here because that's not what I want. This does not go here. This is the answer, okay? So this is your h now, and this is your k. So your center is negative 3, negative 5. So that's your center. So the center is negative 3, negative 5. Now the radius, this is where some students get confused as well. So the radius, you remember this right here is not the radius. This right here, if you think about it, is the radius squared. So for this part, the radius squared is equal to 30. That's what you're saying. So to get the radius by itself, to find the radius, you're going to take the square root of 30. And so then the radius will be the square root of 30, and the only perfect square that goes into 30 is 1. So I cannot simplify that. So the answer for that one is the square root of 30. Okay? All right, so that was number 1. Let's look at number 2. So number 2, we have this. It looks like this: x squared plus y squared minus 4x plus 8y minus 7 equals 0. Okay, so remember what step 1 said. So step 1 said put all the x's together, put all the y's together, and bring this constant to the other side. That was step 1. So what you're going to do is this. You're going to say, well, I'm going to rewrite this as x squared minus 4x. Now remember, every time you go from general form to standard form, you're going to be adding a number to both sides twice. So you're going to add a number here, add a number here, add a number here, add that same number here. All right? So what I would do at this point is I would say plus blank, put a blank there at this point, and then plus y squared plus 8y plus a blank equal, now you're going to add 7 to both sides. And don't forget, let's put these blanks here as well. So what I add here, if I add a 5 here, I've got to add a 5 here. If I add a 7 here, I've got to add a 7 here. Okay? So we got to fill in these blanks by completing the square. All right, so let's talk about that now. So we did step 1. So step 1 was to rearrange so that the x terms and the y terms are together. And I did. So your x terms are together, your y terms are together, your constants on the other side. I brought negative 7 over. That was positive 7. Then we're going to complete the square. And we're going to do steps 2 and 3 at once. All right, so to complete the square, we take the coefficient of x. Now be careful, the coefficient of x is a negative 4. Okay, so that's important. Negative 4, I divide that by 2. When I divide negative 4 by 2, I get negative 2. Okay, but I got to square that. So negative 2 squared is a positive 4. So whenever you square this number, it should always be positive. It should always be positive, never negative. So that's why you're adding 4 to both sides. Okay? All right, so remember, you're going to take the coefficient of x, always divide by 2. Whatever you get, you're going to square it, and then you're going to add that number to both sides. If you're doing this correctly, remember, if you're doing this correctly, this should now be a perfect square trinomial. So you'll be able to factor this as a binomial times itself, and you can, so it's x minus 2 squared. So x minus 2 times x minus 2 is this. All right, and it's easy to factor because, see, this will always be a perfect square. So think about, well, what times itself is 4? Well, it's 2. And it's got to have this middle sign here. All right, let's do the y's. So we take the coefficient of 8, coefficient of y, which is 8. Divide by 2, I get 4. Then take that 4 and you square it, you get 16. So we're going to add 16 to both sides. Again, this should now, right here, this should now be a perfect square trinomial. So when I, don't forget the plus sign here. So when I factor, I'm going to get a binomial times itself. And it's easy to know what it is. What times itself twice is 16? Well, 4. And you always use this middle sign, so it'll be y plus 4. And if you multiply this out, you're going to get this trinomial. And then we just use a calculator for the next part. So 16 plus 4 is 20. 20 plus 7 is 27. So your standard form is this now. So that's your standard form. So standard form, you're going to write x minus 2 squared plus y plus 4 squared equal 27. And so the center, okay, so the center, let's kind of talk about that like we did the previous one. So this was number 1 right here. So the center, here's number 2. This is what we got. We got x minus 2 squared plus y plus 4 squared equal 27. So remember, the standard form is this. So x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So again, students have trouble determining the center. They want to say it's negative 2, positive 4, and it's not, because you're not thinking about what the equation looks like. So this is, so rewrite this so it looks like this. So it's already a subtraction here. I'm going to rewrite this as a subtraction. So y plus 4 is the same thing as saying y minus a negative 4 squared equal 27. So this is your h. This is your k. So the center is 2, negative 4. So that goes here. So the center, 2, negative 4. Make sure you put parentheses because that's a point. And then to talk about the radius, remember the radius, this is not the radius. This right here, remember, represents the radius squared. So the radius squared is equal to 27. So if I take the square root of both sides, I get the radius to be the square root of 27. And I can simplify this because 9 is a perfect square that goes into 27, and it's the largest one that goes into 27. So that's the square root of 9 times the square root of 3. So I get 3 square root of 3. So your radius equals 3 square root of 3. Okay, so that goes here. So the radius equals 3 square root of 3. All right, so that is the key to the worksheet on topic 10, part C.